a kid, I wanted to be superhuman. Actually, I wanted to be a superhero. To be more precise, I wanted to be Spider-Man. I wanted to swing between tall buildings. I wanted to clear the streets of the bad guys. But unfortunately, I was raised in a small village in Northamptonshire. There were no tall buildings. There was no bad guys, really, although the milkman's eyes were quite close together. And there were no radioactive spiders. In fact, the only trouble I ever got into was the day that my mum found out I'd used a black marker pen for drawing a giant spider on my new red pyjamas. So I became a magician. So I'm not a superhero, but I do get to pretend on weekends. My job as a magician is not to do magic. My job as a magician is to move my audiences as close to the experience of magic as I possibly can. So as I say, it's not about being superhuman, it's about pretending to be superhuman. Now, for those of you here who might think that magic is a little bit trivial, maybe even childish, magic's an enormous subject. It covers far more than just children's entertainment, or entertainment in general. Magic's attracted over the years some of the finest minds in mathematics, in the sciences and in the arts. And at one point, magic had attributed to it the third largest body of literature in the world. And this was third after only medicine and pornography. I think that's an incredible statistic. I've been a professional magician for over 20 years and I've never read a book on medicine. So what I want to do in the next 15 minutes or so is to share with you some ideas about how I go about reaching this superhuman ideal of the experience of magic. However, there is a bit of a problem. And the problem is I'm a member of a society called the Magic Circle. In fact, I'm a member of a society called the Inner Magic Circle. And we're bound by the motto, in oculis private loci, apologies for the pronunciation, but it roughly translates as So this has the potential to be the least informative talk of the entire day. So what I'm going to do, to make up for the lack of real secrets, I'm going to try and show you a trick as I go along. And to that end, I have a packet of cards. Now they are all different. This makes it a little bit more interesting for you, and a hell of a lot more difficult for me. And we'll start with this. I'm just going to ask, would you mind doing me a favour? Could you just take a card for me? Excellent stuff. If you could look at it, show it around. Don't show it to me. That makes my job pointless. Okay, thank you. Just keep hold of that for now. Tricks are a really good place to start, actually, to start this conversation, because obviously tricks are what magicians do, right? You know, when I meet somebody for the first time, they say, what do you do? I say, I'm a magician. They say, show me a trick. That is, of course, unless they're related to my wife, in which case I'm told to tell them I'm a doctor. And tricks are what magicians do, and people talk about tricks. Almost. Magicians do this as well. They talk about tricks as though they were the unit of measurement for my profession. You know, they talk about it as though that's what we do. Tricks. And so surely tricks are the most important things that magicians do. Well, a very famous magician, a man by the name of David Devant, so famous you may never have even heard of him, was once approached by a young, up-and-coming magician who boasted to David Devant that he knew over 100 tricks. And he challenged David Devant with this knowledge. David Devant's response to this was, I know about 8. And this was a man who was a founding member of the Magic Circle. Now, I have no doubt that David Devant knew more than 8 tricks, but I think what he was trying to convey was the fact that the trick is a very small part of what magicians do in their pursuit of the experience of magic. David Devant's motto, his catchphrase at the time of his fame, was all done with kindness. It wasn't all done with tricks. Tricks are simply the how we do what we do. They're the mechanics behind what we do. They're a series of moves or sleights. They're a gimmick or a prop. Something designed to trick you. They're simply the physical element of the experience. The building blocks, if you will. The bricks, but not the building itself. So why do we focus so much attention on tricks? Why is it that magic is so synonymous with tricks? And why do people, and we all have these in our professions, we all have these tricks that we do. So why do we focus our attention on the tricks? Well, the reason I think this is because these things are tangible. They exist in reality. You can measure them. We love things you can measure because that means we can judge our progress. We can assess ourselves. We can align ourselves with our contemporaries. Any trick you can do, I can do better. And that makes us feel safe. And so what we do is we gather together as many of these how-tos, as many of these tricks as we possibly can. And we stack them up, these building blocks. We stack them up until they create a wall. And then what we do is we hide behind that wall. But this causes a problem because, on two fronts actually, because first of all that doesn't make you any more superhuman, that doesn't move you towards the experience of magic. It actually dehumanises the entire process. And also, when you're hiding behind a wall, you can't see opportunities. And thirdly, and this is a slightly more contemporary problem, something that David Devant probably didn't have, is that wall is crumbling and it's under attack. There's no power anymore in secrets, because secrets belong to anybody who has an iPhone and a Visa card. Knowledge is accessible to anybody and everybody who has access to the internet. So what do? How do we overcome this? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to step out from behind your wall. And you have to stop viewing what you do in terms of tricks. Because tricks, as I say, don't have that power anymore. We have to start viewing them in terms of effects. And this is really important. When you start to view what you do in terms of effects, you do something very important. You acknowledge the existence of an audience. And that stops you looking down at what you're doing. And you start to look up at the people who you're doing it for. And it makes a massive, massive difference. The effects are simply stories. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And these building blocks we had before, they now become stepping stones in the development of these stories. And in between those stepping stones, there's space. Lots and lots of space. And it's that space that provides us with the greatest opportunity to create the experience of magic. Brené Brown, in her now famous talk on vulnerability, describes stories as data with a soul. So if we think about these stepping stones as the data, the rest of that empty space we have to fill with soul. Stories are great mechanisms for turning information into emotion. And if you want to create an experience, you have to stir people's emotions. We're emotional creatures, human beings. We're driven fundamentally by the most primitive part of our brain, the limbic system, the lizard brain. This is the part that drives our emotions. And when our emotions are stimulated, we are stimulated. We focus more, we learn more, we absorb more. We become more human. The person who understood this as well as anybody was a guy by the name of Harry Houdini. Probably the most famous magician who ever lived. Now Houdini, in 1904, took up a challenge which became known as the mirror handcuff challenge. And in this challenge, he was shackled at the wrists by a set of handcuffs that had been deemed by the press to be impossible to escape from. He then stepped behind a curtain, and his ordeal lasted over an hour. And in that time, he would occasionally step out from behind the curtain, still shackled. And the audience would groan. But he would simply want to look at the lock in the light, and he would step back behind the curtain. Then he would come out again, still shackled. The audience would groan. He needed a glass of water. At one point, he even stepped out from behind the curtain, still shackled, demanding that he take the shackles off so he could take his coat off, because he was so uncomfortable. But the panel, they refused him that luxury. So Houdini took a penknife out of his pocket, and he slashed his overcoat into ribbons and threw it on the floor. The crowd went crazy. Houdini stepped behind the curtain, and a few moments later he appeared victorious. And as I say, it took him about an hour. The truth is, a man with Houdini's skill, with his physical prowess, and this is most important, his knowledge of that particular occasion, he probably could have got out of those handcuffs in about 30 seconds. But he understood the power of the story. He understood the power of stirring people's emotions. And he also understood the power of exceeding expectations. And the stories that magicians tell very often aim to lower your expectations of our success, so that when we achieve success, the level of astonishment is so much greater. So by increasing the difficulty, the conflict in my story, I can lower your expectations that I might succeed. And therefore when I do, I've increased the gap between what you expect and what I deliver. And that's how magic is created, by exceeding expectations. In order to create the experience of magic, you have to exceed expectations. And the best way to do that is to manage those expectations yourself, like Houdini did in 1904. So what about my story? The story with the card. I haven't forgotten. I've forgotten some things, but I hadn't forgotten. I could just have the card replaced.
Do you like me to replace it?
If you wouldn't mind. You can put it there if you like. I'll just do a different trick. I could just have the card replaced with that. If I now found it, you see, nowadays if I have a card chosen, I say, would you be surprised if I found the card? People very rarely say yes, now they say no. That's your job. So I have to increase the gap between what you expect of me and what I actually deliver. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand you those cards. And if you could just shuffle them up for me, that would be great. All right, you did. Now what I'm doing now is, you see, I know where the card was replaced, so what I'm actually trying to do now is something which gamblers refer to as shuffle tracking. I don't actually know what the card is, but I'm trying to track the card as the cards are shuffled. You can stop now. Would you like to shuffle as well, sir? You've got to remember I'm on an 18-minute schedule here, okay? Well, you're both shuffling, alright, I'll tell a story while you're doing that, shall I? So, to make this harder for me as well, because obviously if I know where the card is, I did, thank you sir, let's make it slightly harder. Could you just do, we're just going to take those, I don't have a curtain to hide behind, so I'm simply going to pop them into my pocket. And I'm now going to try and use a different technique, which is the tactile senses. Can I point out, if this does work, there will be no one more impressed than me. So I'm going to say with a degree of certainty, as I reach into my pocket, that your card is none of these. And I'm also going to say, with a degree of certainty, that your card yeah, did I give you a speaking card? I'm going to say that your card is none of these. I don't think it's that one. This one I'm not sure about. I'm going to leave it face down there. These guys can see that. Which means it's none of these. And it also means it's none of these. I have one card turned face down. Now, I didn't know what it was, but I think I knew where it was by following this process of shuffle tracking. What was your card?
Can I remember?
You have no idea how much more impressive this is if you do remember. What was it?
I think it was the 8 of diamonds.
The 8 of diamonds?
Yeah.
What was the 8 of diamonds?
Yeah, it's my age. Sorry.
See, all of this is just a story, it's just a rehearsal, it's just practice. Because you can practice your tricks, you can rehearse your effects, but there's no magic until there's an audience. So if you do want to create the experience of magic, you have to take that third, final and crucial step. You have to choose to perform. And that takes both bravery and generosity. Bravery because you have to step into the spotlight. You have to put your hand up and say, I'll do it. And say, I'll do it. You have to step into the spotlight. You have to open yourself up to criticism, to potential failure and possible ridicule. You have to take those risks. And it also takes generosity because every time you perform, you give away a little bit of yourself. If you don't, you're not performing. You're simply going through the motions. And that doesn't move you closer to the experience of magic. So I have a few minutes left, and as I say, I became a magician. I wasn't a superhero ever, far from it. But over the years I've picked up a number of skills that allow me to at least pretend. So that's what I'll try and do very quickly. Can I ask you to do me a favour? If you could just cut off a small pile of cards, just cut them off and hold them. Once you've cut them off, hold them in your hand like that, close your hands around them like that. Thank you very much. Sorry, you were drinking. Could you just do the same? Just a small packet of cards, just cut them off and then just hold them in your hands like that for me. So I don't. And I'm going to come to you. Would you mind, if I pull the corners back, could you say stop whenever you like? Stop. Are you happy with that one? Yeah. Would you like to change your mind? Yeah. You could if you like. It would help in this particular instance. No? Excellent stuff. Now you guys have got cards, you've all got cards. One of the first skills I did learn was the ability to read people's thoughts as they say them in their head. Like Professor Xavier in the X-Men, I can do that kind of thing now. This is just a skill that I've developed. I need you to look me square in the eyes. It's unpleasant for you, I know, but it will be over very soon. While you look me in the eyes, I want you to say the name. You're going to start with the colour. Say the colour of your card in your head. Just say it over and over again. Say the colour of your card over and over again. I'm getting black. Was it a black card? It was a black card. Thank you very much. So now say the suit of the card. Say the suit of the card. Now if I were to say clubs, I think I would be wrong. I'd be wrong, wouldn't I? That's nothing to do with magic. That's just the ability to recognise the look of disappointment in a woman's face. So now I know it's a spade. I know it's a spade. Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Say that in your head. In your head, not out loud. Don't move your lips. I'm getting a... I think it was the Jack of Spades. Was it the Jack of Spades? It wasn't the Jack of Spades that you looked at. Apparently it was the Jack of Spades you were looking at. Jack of Spades, yeah. No, I've only got 30 seconds to finish this. The second skill I've learned is how to see very small objects from a great distance. So I'm going to step over here while we do this. Sorry, the camera's having to follow me. What I need you to do is to very quickly just look at your card like that. Just look at it for me like that. Have you got it? You've got that card in your head. I caught a glimpse in your eye from this distance. I caught the glimpse of a black card. Was it a black card? It wasn't a black card. You're sure about that? In that case, just hold it up again. Sorry. Oh, it's refraction. Sorry, it was refraction of the light. It was a red card. Thank you very much. No, we'll go with this. It was a red card. It was a red card. So I think it was possibly. The reason it's confused me because I think we've seen this card before, haven't we? We've seen this card before. It was the 8 of diamonds again, wasn't it? Was it the 8 of diamonds? Can we just have a look? There it is. It was the 8 of diamonds. Now, coming to you, the last skill that I've learned over the years. I always wanted to do Spider-Man, like I said. Spider-Man had something called a Spidey sense. I'm going to try and use my Spidey sense. Hold the cards in your hand and then drop them onto your hand like that. Just drop them onto your hand. Fantastic stuff. Thank you very much. What that does, it compresses the air. It sends a vibration through the air. I'm using my Spidey sense. Would you just very quickly join me up here, because what I think you have in your hand, I think you have 26 cards in your hand, judging by the vibration. You just count down onto my hand very quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 26 cards. I'm out of time. Choose to perform. Look up, look around, and enjoy life. Thank you very much.